Hey. Mm-hmm. Yep, looking good, Clint.
It's been too long.
I know. Forever.
We can't go hours without seeing each other, Heather.
I know. I'm like a bad penny. Can't get rid of me.
Heather, thank you for coming on the show. An honor to see you and have you in studio. A real honor.
Thank you.
Actually. Thank you for being here. Tell us about Heather. Let's start there.
Okay.
Introduce yourself to the community. Not that you need one, but let's give everyone a sense.
Great. So I live here in Provo. I am in tech and I do marketing for a company in Denver. I have 5 kids. I'm a single mom and I love working in the Silicon Slopes community. I'm a vice chair of the AI chapter and I love bringing AI to enthusiasts and data scientists and business leaders to bring more productivity to their lives, enhance their businesses. And I really love working in tech and helping bring that also to women. So
how do you think Utah's doing on the AI front? We just held the Silicon Slopes AI Summit, which you were a major part of as the vice chair of the whole chapter. Where are we at? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think in some cases there's some businesses that are tired of hearing about AI and they're not able to show the ROI from their investments. And so I think that there's maybe a little bit of retrenchment from that because they think, oh, we put all this money into our AI initiatives and we're not seeing the return. And so I hope that we're not slowing down that way, but I do hear a lot of negativity around of like, AI isn't what we thought it was going to be, but I still feel like as those enhancements and as we continue to grow in the AI realm, that as we build the community around AI, and in my world, that means educating, building more, fluency and certainly literacy around AI is something that I feel really strongly about. So I see lots of innovation coming ahead, like with AI agents, and I do think that we're going to have some really exciting things ahead, but I worry that there's a lot of negativity around AI right now too.
Really? That's interesting that you're hearing a lot. Well, it is kind of this in an interesting point where it's at an inflection point where the full value hasn't been realized yet, but the potential is so obvious.
Huge.
And some value within certain segments of AI, particularly LLMs, is outstanding. It's crazy what's happening there. Now, how do you transfer that into businesses and stuff is really interesting. It's probably AI agents, right?
Yep.
Or some version of that. So what do those look like? And how long until we can build our own AI agents?
I was talking to somebody, an entrepreneur just yesterday. In fact, he's doing a startup with AI agents specifically. And I asked him what that might look like. And we talked a little bit about just how there's this idea of taking out the human to be able to increase productivity and be able to do so much more with AI, but still knowing that you've got to have a human element. So having, autonomous systems be able to do all the work is great, but you still have to have some human oversight and human, just like the feeling, the personalization of it, I think is really important. But in my world, I really get excited about making it available to everybody and feel very tangible and usable now, as opposed to waiting until the innovation comes.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the work you do.
So primarily I work in tech and I help enterprises use, VMware or, Oracle, SAP to be able to have software support and take it away from the vendor. So I promote that. I also work with analysts around the world, and these analysts are really great for businesses to be able to create value. So either with Gartner or Infotech, those analysts and building relationships. And so that's something my role expanded about a year ago from the field marketing side to expand much more into the analyst side, which I really, really love. Outside of tech, specifically, I'm working on a startup. So I have Elavare that I launched last year as a way to help women return to the workforce with confidence. And because I became a single mom 10 years ago and had to return to the workforce, it's something that I feel passionate about.
Yeah, tell us how that's going and how is Utah when it comes to that particular issue?
It's very unique here in Utah. I'm excited about how Elavare is growing. I started with a team of BYU students through the OCI Avenue, which is their on-campus internship program.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had 5 BYU students doing research. We interviewed over 100 mothers to find out why are some of the, what are some of the reasons why you don't want to return to the workforce, or what is keeping you from it? Or, what do you feel like you would need to be able to return to the workforce with confidence? And out of that, they recognize that they have some real barriers. And I think that what we're doing now to create much more functionality and some programs to be able to help women is going to be significant, both here in Utah and then outside of Utah. Here in Utah, I work a lot with a Boulder Way Forward. I'm on their workforce development spoke as a group leader. And I feel like as I talk to more women, I recognize that while we're making strides to get more women into the workforce, we still have a long ways to go. And then once they're in the workforce, trying to make more equitable, both on a salary perspective and opportunities, it's still really lacking. And I love working with, male allies in addition with the women that I work with to find a solution. And I feel like we're making inroads to that, but we have a long ways to go, and it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take time.
What are some of the big barriers?
Are you asking for women or
for women?
Okay. I think the single biggest barrier is this lack of confidence. So I heard somewhere that confidence requires evidence. And so if you can't see evidence of what you're capable of doing, it's really hard to bridge that gap. And so a lot of women have, experience of being a mother, being a housewife, running a household. But outside of that, they can't see any of their skills. And so what I try to help women see is that all the things that they've been doing as a mother, project management, conflict negotiation, budgeting, all those things transfer very clearly to the workforce. But what's challenging is helping the workforce, meaning businesses and organizations, see that value, right? And as soon as a woman is in the workforce and she's doing the work, they can see, oh my gosh, she's fantastic. She's wonderful. But until they make that connection, it's really challenging.
And what are the barriers on the other side from an employer perspective?
I was talking to my brother, and he's a VP of a company that does consumer product goods. And he was telling me that he said, I'm all for hiring women. I believe it. I love you. You're great. But I think it's hard to convince people that some of these women that have had a long career gap, or anyone with a career gap for that, reason, you just have a hard time seeing that you can get right back into it pretty quickly. And so I think businesses too don't want to spend a lot of time or waste a lot of time hiring women that aren't up to speed, or they don't want their, if you're a manager, you've already got so much on your plate. You don't want to necessarily be training and trying to help a woman get up to speed on your watch. You want to be able to help, hire someone immediately that can do the work. So I think helping educate companies and businesses to see that these women have strong work skills right now. Yes, there might be a little bit of nuance there where they're going to have to get up to speed in some areas. But in many ways, it's like a muscle memory, right? You figure these things out, you learn it. I remember when I got hired for the first time at KT Tape, and I didn't know marketing terminology. I hadn't graduated marketing, and I Googled it. Google was my best friend. So I think there's a lot of things you can learn on the job, but I think that's the biggest barrier is I think companies can't see the value immediately.
I'm blown away by KT Tape. That's a really interesting company, the way it's exploded. What did you learn there that you've taken, beyond?
First of all, because they gave me my shot when I returned to the workforce, I'm super grateful to them. The founders helped me see potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And so I wanted to share this story because I think it's great. I'd only been working for the company about a month, and the founder that was the CMO, Jim Jensen, he got really, really sick. And we had a photo shoot with James Harden the next day. And he called me up and said, Heather, do you think you can do this photo shoot with James Harden? And I had actually done all of the shots. I had picked all the shots for this photo shoot. And I said, I said, Jim, I could do it, but I've never done it before. I think I can do it. And I think I just said, yes, I can do it. So the next day I was on a plane to Houston and did this photo shoot with James. And then from there, I did all of the photo shoots with all of our sponsored athletes and Olympians. It was an amazing opportunity. But what's funny is I actually didn't use KT Tape, and I didn't know that it worked. And I was running and preparing for a half marathon, and I was in a lot of pain. And someone said, oh, you should just tape that. And I said, tape it? What do you mean? And they're like, with KT Tape. It's like, you and I both know it doesn't work, right? They're like, no, it really does. And so I put it on my tendon, and the first day I didn't notice anything different. And the second day I was going to take it off, but it hurt too much. So I left it on. And the third day, my pain was completely gone. I was a total believer in KT tape. I've taped all of my kids through all of their injuries, sports, growing pains even. And to see KT tape continue to grow has been a beautiful thing. I loved that job. It was really great.
How does it work? Because I know that it does work because all these professional athletes use it. It's everywhere. It's in every sport. And so it certainly is doing something. They don't put things on their body that don't work.
Yeah.
But how does it work?
Two different ways. So the skin, the fascia, is lifted off microscopically off of the lymphatic system. So all of the fluid that's flowing. So when you have an injury, the tape helps lift it up just enough to let that fluid flow. And so then that way it can heal faster. But also too, just for alignment. So like if you have knee pain and you tape and you have that knee support, it's like holding the knee, like stabilizing it, right? And so then you don't have that same pressure, and it, again, allows it to be able to feel supported and heal. So, but I've also used it for my kids' growing pains, and that might be psychosomatic, but it worked like a charm.
That's cool. Where did you go after KT tape?
So I left KT tape. I had intended to stay at KT tape long-term, but a private equity came in and a company, and they actually let everybody go, the founders, and the new CMO that they brought in started taking away all my responsibilities. So the prior CMO let me do everything and anything. He believed in me. But the new one, he was from a military background and just like wouldn't let me do the job.
You don't meet too many CMOs from military.
I know. He was a
helicopter
pilot, actually.
Interesting.
And so I knew I had to leave. I didn't want to, but because I loved my job, but I knew I had to. And so I left KT Tape with the intention of going into tech. I was super excited to go into tech because I had been reading all these articles about companies here locally and outside of Utah too, wanting to hire more women. So I sent out my resume and figured, I'll get all these job offers. I didn't get a single interview. And it was so devastating because I wanted to get into tech. I thought it would be easy because I was a woman wanting to get a job. And you don't remember this, but I reached out to you in January. Actually, I reached out to Gavin Christensen first of January of 2017. And I just said, hey, I want to get into tech. I can't get any job interviews at all. Nobody will talk to me. And I know, what do I do? And he took time and gave me some ideas and some things like that I could think about of getting to a SaaS company or whatever. And then a couple months later, the Silicon Slopes magazine came out and I offered to write an article for Silicon Slopes. And so I wrote an article on startup culture and the importance of getting your culture right in a startup. And I got to interview all these really well-known startup founders here in the area and outside of Utah, but mostly here, and learn about tech. And then I started going to the Silicon Slopes events and all these other things. I took a coding class because I wanted to look like I belonged in tech. And that made all the difference.
That's incredible. That's so cool. I do remember when you wrote for us. That was awesome. So tell us about this event you've got coming up. It's in October.
Yep.
It's the end of October.
Yep. So out of the research that these students did at BYU, they came with some recommendations. And one of the recommendations was to do an event. And I shied away from it because I'm in the event space. In field marketing, you do events in the field, and I knew all the work that goes into it. And so I didn't want to do it. And they said, Heather, you've really got to get an event done because then you can build, name recognition for your brand and you can get a lot of women to attend. And I put it off and then realized, oh my gosh, I think they're right. I should listen to these smart students. And so in May, I met with Rachel Lund, who runs the Women's Success Center what was formerly the Women's Success Center at UVU.
Yeah, it can't be called that now.
I know. Huh? I think it's the Office of Cultural Diversity or something. I can't remember what it's called.
That's actually really
I know.
It's fascinating.
It's very, very interesting. She was very supportive of what I wanted to do, but she also said she had some limitations. So she connected me with UVU's Small Business Resource Center, and they're co-sponsoring it. So we're doing an event at the end of this month to help women return in the workforce. And anybody could actually attend the event, but we're focused on mothers. And students can attend for free if they come with a paying mom, because students, as you know, need to know how to do a resume, LinkedIn profile, how to interview. And the idea is that hopefully students will want to support their mothers who are thinking about going back to work. And so this idea of, hey, mom, come with me to this event. We're going to both learn how to do our resume and LinkedIn profile together. And I love the idea of it, and hopefully it'll be successful.
So tell everyone where they go, the dates, all that type of stuff, because I want to make sure you
Thank you.
get a ton of people there.
So if you want to know more about it, you can go to elavare.com, and that's elavare.com. And the link to the event will be on the webpage. But also too, you can learn about it through UVU as well. It's October 26th from 1 to 5, registration at 12:30. And it's just an opportunity for women to gather, be able to visit and learn all these, resources, talk to the experts. Charlene Wells is our keynote speaker, former Miss America, and also have some businesses there that could potentially hire and give, mothers an opportunity to be able to kind of gain some confidence and hear from other women who have done it and navigate that successfully.
What's your sense for the future of events?
Oh gosh, that is such a good question. We talked a little bit about that this morning at the Silicon Slopes event. I think in the event space, I think there's so much more focus on the experience, right? It used to be you could, after post-COVID, it was like you could do any event and people are going to come because they missed that human interaction, right? But now I think you've got to up-level it. So if you're going to do an event, you need to have a deeper connection with the attendees and the speakers, or you've got to do it so that it's like an amazing experience. And I think that's the shift that we're going to see, is that there are going to be fewer events, but more meaningful events where you're going to have more deeper connections. And I think it's also time for people to also let their guard down and have more just vulnerability with each other and talk about maybe some of the hard topics and things that are going on in our lives. And I still think that there's a place for, like the virtual events, but I think those are going to be far and few between because we did that for 4 years it just feels like we did it for so long that I think now we're ready to be fully in person, but they're going to be fewer events in my mind, that the experience is going to be the focus.
From an attendee perspective and like a community member perspective, and for women, because we don't get a lot of women coming to a lot of tech events. What should they go to? What should they not go to? How do you make events more open and welcoming? And it's the funny thing, you mentioned it just previously. You and I were just at an event together this morning and talking about this very issue. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Like, how do you get more women to come to events? One, and two, like, how do you even just as an attendee know which events to go to and which ones not to, Oh,
yeah. No, those are both really good questions. I think for the first question, I've been at events where I've been one of 5 women, and that's unfortunate. And I don't know that maybe they don't know enough about the event. They aren't aware of it. So I think first and foremost, making sure that it's in the community, but also you're focusing on getting it to the different either Facebook groups or whatever groups to get more women there. I think that's just a big challenge. I don't know how to solve for that other than being very deliberate in who you invite and making it open. One of the things that was really great for me when I tried to get into the tech world is I would contact the company, whether it was Silicon Slopes or maybe it was Qualtrics doing their big event. And I would say, I'd really like to attend. Can I volunteer? What can I do to get a ticket? Because I didn't have the money to pay for the ticket. And a lot of the times they would just say, yeah, we'd love to have you there. And they would give me a code to be able to attend for free. So I think making events available for people who may not be able to afford it that way, I think that's really impactful. Obviously having speakers and making sure panelists, and I have no problem having the token woman. I don't mind being the token woman. I think that's fine. I think women need to see themselves at the event. And so if you have women who are being promoted as part of the event, helps a lot. On the second side, and what was the question on the second? It was
like, how do you know
which events?
Like which event is like worth going to? Like, how do you know, like you mentioned, like the Qualtrics and Silicon Slopes events, and like one, it's interesting. Like, how do you know those are even worth going to? But like, even like the smaller events, like what should people be thinking about who are trying to get engaged in this community, get involved in this community, in terms of what events to go to and which ones not to? Because the content is important, but my sense is who's going to be there is more important.
Yes. And sometimes events can feel very transactional, meaning I'm going to go to this event because I'm going to get something. But I think we need to think about what are we going to give to the event? And a lot of times that's in the networking space, right? So going to an event with the mindset of, I'm going to bring value. I'm not going to fully expect to receive 100% of the value from the, speakers and participants, but also coming with an open mind of who could I potentially meet? How could I help somebody else that's at the event either, get a job, feel more comfortable, network, et cetera. And I think that's where you get the real value and where the magic happens from events is coming in with a deliberate effort to you be the business value, or you bring the value as opposed to waiting for those that are participating and putting the event on. I think also to just getting really comfortable with being with people and attending an event that you may not, you have to go into it with a positive mindset too, right? And there are a lot of events that start out small, like my Elavare event. It's going to be small. I hope that it's impactful and meaningful from the very get-go, but sometimes it takes time. Like when you did the first Silicon Slope Summit, I was there, but it's grown and it's changed and evolved, right? So giving the organizers a little bit of grace that maybe it's going to take some time. We do these monthly lunch and learns with the AI chapter of Silicon Slopes. And I know our first one, we didn't realize everything, and it's evolved over time. And of course, we just had the summit, and it's been great. I think a lot of the value has come from people being able to connect with other people at the event, and certainly from the presenters. But that meaningful connection at the event is, I think, really where, like I said, the magic happens.
Yeah, I think that's the give first mentality. I think Utah's pretty good at that. We could probably be better at it. Like this whole give first at an event, give first in the community, and you always reap more than and so
100%.
I'm not sure why people don't. It's actually advantageous to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely those that are introverts, right? They feel very uncomfortable, but I did too. And as I continued to, again, that's like you're building muscles and the skill set to go to these events and get out of your comfort zone. It takes a little bit of time, but it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm a huge introvert.
Really? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I mean, I've cut back on events a lot. Probably because I'm getting older. My kids are growing. Like, I don't know, like anything. We used to do events like after 5 p.m. Like we'd do like these 8 o'clock events. I can't imagine doing an 8 p.m. event.
We're done.
I can't imagine doing that. I went to the hockey game, the first hockey game last night, and I didn't get home until past midnight. I was dead. I was literally dead. Like that is too late for me.
Gone are the days when we used to be able to stay up and function the next day.
I can't do that. That's too much. I like morning events. I like lunch events. I do too. Anything beyond that, I'm not sure. Which I think is unique to Utah. I think that mentality might be a Utah. I think if you go to Silicon Valley or San Francisco or Boston or these other places, like there's a lot of nighttime events. Yeah,
they're just getting started at 1 a.m. Right? I think it's very unique to Utah. But I love going to events, but definitely once it hits a certain hour, I'm like, I turn into a pumpkin at that point. So.
Yeah. What are some organizations that you find super helpful as it relates to women? I know you mentioned the one that you were on the board of, A Bolder Way Forward.
Yes, definitely A Bolder Way Forward is at the forefront of my mind. It's going to be, I think it's a 6 or 7 year program to be able to get everything moving. And we're making great strides in that area. I love tech moms. I think that's a powerful catalyst for helping women get really comfortable with tech. I wish it had existed, and maybe it did exist back in 2017, but I didn't know about it. That I think is fantastic. I think they do a lot more just in not even just helping build skill sets in tech, but again, building confidence. So those are the two that stand out. I would say the Women in Leadership, project. I think there are a lot of programs that are here in the state of Utah to help accelerate women in their careers, but also, building confidence. I think there are lots of opportunities out there for women to take advantage of. I don't know that a lot of women know. I think that's the single biggest challenge. I was talking to Mary Crafts just before this podcast, and she was telling me that there are 6 other events going on in Utah for women in October. I know 3 of them. I didn't even know there were 3 others. And maybe I'm not enough in the loop with all of that, but I think there are a lot of resources and events for women that they could attend they don't even know about.
That's awesome. You know Mary Crafts?
I don't know her really well, but she's awesome.
We grew up in the same neighborhood.
No way.
No, we didn't grow up. Like I grew up in the same neighborhood. And so I've known her my whole life. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. Mary's my hero.
She's awesome. She is everybody's hero, I think.
Yeah. She's an incredible woman. So that's cool that you know her. As you think about having to come back into the workforce, given like you said, you like went through this thing where you had to come back. What have you learned about yourself since?
So much. I was telling Mary in my conversation how grateful I am for the men in my life. I grew up with 5 brothers and they were super encouraging. I'm going to get emotional. I don't want to get emotional.
No, it's great.
But so many men have been so encouraging of my ability and potential. I think lots of times we don't see our potential and we need somebody else to step up and help us recognize it. And so I was just mentioning to her that I feel like I've grown so much because I didn't see my potential. I didn't see what value I could add. And the men in my life, and I'm presumably because they're in the workforce and they're, on boards and things like that, they could see what I couldn't. And they've been able to say, Heather, you should do this, or encourage me, like going back to school, get my MBA. I never would have considered it if I didn't have 2 men that came to me and just said, hey, and Mary and I were talking about this a little bit about, there's a lot of women groups that are, male bashers and they're very anti-men. And every good thing that's happened to me has been because a man helped elevate me. And so I've grown so much over the 10 years that I've been back in the workforce because of opportunities I've been given, both in my current job and other jobs, and even in the community, where others have recognized what I could offer from a value perspective and gave me a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So my confidence has grown, my skill set has grown. I'm on a board of directors. I never in a million years would have guessed that would ever happen. And here I'm doing this startup, which is crazy. But a lot has happened and a lot has changed. And I think that's why I want to give back, is because if I can do it, anybody can. But yeah, just feeling really grateful for the journey.
Well, we talk a lot about like how important it is to give as many chances as you take. And it sounds like you've experienced a good deal of that. As you think about future and what you want to accomplish and kind of what you want your legacy to be and all of this, what do you have in mind there?
Up until about a year ago, I had thought, well, I want to do a startup. I want to become, well known for this company. And now I just want to be well known for helping women, and not even just women, but others see their potential and just give back in a really meaningful way, because then those people will then carry that forward, right? So it's this, it just catalyzes additional greatness. And I think that's what I want to be known for, is bringing the best out of people. I'm all about building relationships because people have shown me the value and how that has made a difference in my life. So if I can help others see that, that will be such a huge success in my mind. That's the legacy I want to leave, is that if people can look to me as somebody that helps them, realize their potential and do more, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's in tech or wherever it happens to be, I will feel like I've left a significant legacy, and that'll be meaningful.
I already do view you that way. Mission accomplished. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible. You've mentioned this a couple times, and I want to dig a little bit deeper on it with you and, for the audience. This whole idea of confidence and how big of a role that plays. And you mentioned before, like, hey, there were all these men who helped me who were in the workforce. And so they just automatically, like, there is like this, it does seem like confidence is in abundant supply on the male side. And somehow we need to empower women to have that same, by the way, it's irrational and undeserved, but it's useful.
Yeah.
How do we do that on the women's side? Because I mean, that's a blanket statement,
right? But
what do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. I've come to realize that we all lack confidence. Like, I was talking to a chief marketing officer, and he was saying, yeah, I have imposter syndrome all the time. And I hate that term, but he referenced it. So I know that we all struggle with figuring out what we're good at and then using that as kind of our path forward. But women especially, I think, and I can't remember who it was that put it out, but it like 60% of men will men will apply for a job that they meet 60%.
I've seen that too.
Or 40% of the requirements. A woman won't unless they meet all of them, right? And I think it's because in their mind, and this is my story that I'm telling myself, is that they can just figure it out. They'll like, something's broken, I'll figure it out. We'll just make it happen. Whereas a woman has to, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. Is this a good decision? So I think there's this temptation to pause and hesitate, because if you don't feel like you can do it really well, it's easy to not do it at all. And I'm like, for example, I'm a terrible ice skater or roller skater. I have no balance whatsoever. So you will never see me at classic skating or at the Seven Peaks Ice Arena.
Skating backwards.
I can't even.
Incredible.
Like the worst date I ever went on was a skating date, and I could not stay up for the life of me. And that's, I was someone's entertainment for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think women they don't see it. They need somebody to like literally shake them and say, you can do this. And then we're like, okay, then we'll try it.
This is something that I did not realize for quite some time, like this kind of confidence gap. We'll call it the confidence gap.
I love that.
That's kind of interesting. Early on in my career, we launched something that we had no business launching. I can't even remember what it was. And I had a woman, like, and not in a rude way, but she's like, well, who are you to do this? Like this is wild. Like, what did you do? And I was like, I never even had that question, never even came up to me. I'm just doing it.
Just doing it.
Yeah. And that's like one of the first times I realized, like, oh, I think we think differently.
You do. And I think that's the value of men and women, right? Men and women together can do great things. And I don't think that, women definitely need to give themselves more grace, give themselves chances to make mistakes. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I don't know what happened over the course of their life or my life where we started to think, well, we have to be really good at something to be able to put ourselves out there. But we could take a lot of encouragement from the men around us, and in a very positive way to be able to see, oh, okay, well, they have the same skills or less than I do, and they did it. Well, I don't know why we don't.
It's going to be less most of the time.
Well, thank you.
The interesting thing is that you learn pretty quickly. Even the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Oh, 100%.
Like the more skills you get, the more skills you realize you do not have.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And when that starts happening, you start looking around and you're like, I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? And you get to that place, and that's a pretty powerful place to be in.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I think we have to realize. We're not alone, right? We're not the only one that doesn't feel like we can do something perfectly. And I have only discovered that more recently. And I wish that I could communicate that to more women and certainly men, that you actually have more potential within yourself than you think you do. And you have to just take the first step, right? Yeah. Just when you're, moving forward, that's action. And just even a little bit at a time will make such a difference. I think we just are waiting to have everything in place. I'm not going to launch this startup until I have everything in place and I know what I'm doing. I'm going to study this and then you never do it.
Yeah.
Because when you do realize you don't know anything, then that's when it's scary. And you're like, oh, the train has left the station.
You kind of need this irrational confidence.
100%.
It needs to, because confidence, you can't really back it up most of the time, but you really need it.
Oh yeah.
Like that is, and then you've got the interesting thing is, and you also had to understand when to be humble. So those two things are pretty hard. But I remember being in rooms with like really, really kind of big name, in quotation, CEOs, and like looking around and like, I think they all are thinking to themselves right now that they don't belong here.
Yes.
Like that's so fascinating. And like people will freak out just to be in the same room with them, and them in the room, they're like, I probably don't belong in this room. It's like, there's no other rooms. Like, what are we doing here?
I know. But I didn't realize that until, later, as I've been in business longer, I realized, wow, I thought I was alone in this lack of confidence. I thought I was the only one that thought, oh, I don't belong. I've got this imposter syndrome or whatever. And then you talk to more people who are at even the high levels, right?
The highest,
especially at the high levels, because you're taking on things that you've never done before. You don't necessarily have evidence of that specific skill that you're now showing. And you might be running a company, you might be running organizations. It's definitely scary. And if you knew that, if somebody were to say to you all of the things you need to be worried about, you'd never do it. Like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. My sense is the more successful you are, the more you get imposter syndrome, right?
100%.
Unless you have like the irrational confidence without the humility, which is really scary, where you really think you know everything and you can do anything. And that gets kind of wild.
Yeah.
Like I think only Elon Musk can pull that type of thing off.
He's actually the example. Yeah.
He can do really good at that. Yeah. I don't think he lacks for confidence ever. And I don't think he is ever in a room where he thinks like, I don't belong here. That's very rare. And that somebody can back it up in that way. Usually like the higher up you get and like whatever it is, then people start looking to you and they start asking questions and they look to you to solve things. You're like, me solve things? What are you talking about? It's really interesting. And we need to talk about it more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people would do more if they knew that other people were feeling those insecurities, the same insecurities. And again, like going back to that concept of being more vulnerable, I wish we had more conversations where we're just like, yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And then other people would realize, oh, it's because I think there's this concept of, oh, only the elite or only the smartest or whatever can do these things. Well, guess what? The only thing that was different from, the only differentiator between you and somebody else that's actually done it is that they either A, didn't know enough that if they had known more, they wouldn't have done it at all. Or they literally are scared and they're just doing it. They're just getting at it, which I think I've talked to enough entrepreneurs now, especially in the, startup community here, that you just believe in yourself. And if you have enough other people believing in you too, when things are difficult, then you can push through that insecurity.
Yeah. The quote unquote elite are no different than any of the rest of us. And as soon as you learn that, it really kind of like, there's some peace that should settle into a lot of people. Like you don't need to live up to any expectations.
Yeah. 100%.
Just be you. Finally, we end every interview with this question, and it's particularly apt for you. Like I mentioned before, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Oh gosh. So many people. I can't even, I think probably the biggest life-changing thing that happened to me in my career and life has probably been going back to school and getting my MBA through BYU. And so Kim Smith, who's since passed, saw my potential, and he's the one who suggested that I go back to school. And then Dan Snow was a former BYU classmate or friend of mine freshman year at BYU, and he's now the director of the executive MBA program. But the two of them combined changed my life. That program changed my life because I was with other individuals in the program that, like what we just talked about, didn't think that they could do it. They were also struggling, but I didn't find out until we were deeper into the program and realized, oh, I'm not alone. And they saw something in me that I didn't see, and it changed my life. And so if I can do that same thing for someone else, 100% I'm going to do it. Because I'm the person I am, because I did hard things in an MBA program, which I never thought I could do, but somehow they thought I could. And so I did it because I thought, well, they think I can do it. And so if I can give somebody else that concept of just give it a try, you can do this, and they'll go on to do great things. You're doing it. I promise you're doing it. You are that for so many people. Heather, thank you so much for coming in. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Yeah.